Today's recap features the psychological drama titled Boxing Helena. Welcome to Flashback Recap. Hit subscribe and let's dive right in. A blonde-haired boy is restless and unsure of what to do with himself at a banquet. One of the guests suggests he should become a surgeon like his father. His mother isn't particularly interested in him. Years later, having buried his mother, he becomes a surgeon and right from the cemetery heads to the operating room. Dr. Alan Harrison had hoped to perform the surgery himself as his colleague was supposedly at a funeral. Cavanaugh returned to the mansion and recalled how his mother used to sleep with various old men. Afterward, the surgeon went to a bar to celebrate with his colleague, Dr. Lawrence. A successful surgery. There, he saw Elena, panicked, and immediately wanted to leave. Apparently, she was his ex-girlfriend for whom he still had feelings despite already seeing another woman. Before dinner, the man decided to go for a run and ended up at Elena's house. He didn't dare knock on the door, but climbed a tree to watch as Helena, in her bra, drank a cocktail and admired the evening sky. Cavanaugh was pleased with what he saw until he realized Helena was not alone in the room, and he didn't want to see what they were doing. He ran away as fast as he could, but not home. Reaching the nearest phone booth, Cavanaugh called Lawrence and asked how he could get Helena back. It turns out they only slept together once, but he still couldn't get her out of his head. Lawrence advised him to simply stay away from her and think about Anne instead. However, the obsessed man couldn't calm down and sent Helena a postcard inviting her to a housewarming party. On his way back, Cavanaugh stopped in front of Helena's house again. Anne didn't wait for her man for dinner, and when the runner finally returned, she was already asleep. Cavanaugh rehearses calling his beloved and finally decides to call. Helena reluctantly took a break from her intimate activities and answered the call but immediately hung up. Helena got angry at the prank caller and, now irritated, chased away her lover Ray. Cavanaugh mentally wished Helena good night, while Anne left in the morning without waiting for her young man to wake up. Fashionable Ray, in a transparent t-shirt and leather pants, came to Helena to invite her to a bar that evening, but she had other plans. She was going to a friend's house and flying to Mexico the next day. At Cavanaugh's house, many guests gathered, but he was only looking for her, nervous and constantly glancing at the clock. Finally, Helena arrived and Cavanaugh immediately ran after her like a puppy. Meanwhile, a friend assures Anne that she will soon get a proposal. Who was all this arranged for? Helena, with a haughty face, walks around the house, ignoring the host. Another guy, Russell, noticed her. He was much less shy and quickly found common ground with her. Helena, in her negligee, decided it would be a good idea to bathe in the local fountain. Anne was curious about who this strange lady was splashing around in front of a bewildered Cavanaugh. Helena invited Russell to have some fun. Anne asked the doctor why he invited this woman, wondering if he was sleeping with her. Russell dashed to Cavanaugh and announced he was leaving with Helena. Even standing before him, Cavanaugh found it hard to hide his sadness about this. It seemed the blonde man was about to cry. In the morning, Helena left Cavanaugh a message. She had forgotten her bag at his place and ordered him to bring it to the airport. She ended the note by saying Russell sends his regards. The man obeyed, but was late, causing Helena to miss her flight. She screamed and cursed at Cavanaugh. Then it turned out her bag was missing, along with her notebook. Helena was furious. She would have to go back to her admirer's house to get it. Encouraged, Cavanaugh decided to cook a meal for the girl and confess his feelings. Helena agreed to come into the house while the blonde searched for the notebook. He quickly lit an aromatic candle and set the table. But all he evoked in Helena was irritation. One of the dishes turned out to be the sought-after notebook, and Helena was furious. He had staged all of this on purpose. She ran out of the mansion and walked to the road. Cavanaugh chased her. Helena got distracted by him and stepped onto the road backward. A passing car hit her and ran over her legs. Dr. Harrison learned that Cavanaugh hadn't appeared at the hospital for several weeks, leaving them without a chief surgeon, and also hadn't seen him since the party. Harrison decided to visit his competitor. Cavanaugh immediately opened the door and remarked on the beautiful day. Harrison came to get a recommendation letter from Cavanaugh so he could become the chief surgeon at the hospital. Cavanaugh claimed he lived alone, but suddenly there was a noise from the next room. It was Helena, who had fallen over and had no legs. Harrison was shocked, and Cavanaugh explained that when the driver hit her due to hypoxia, she needed surgery as soon as possible, which he did right there in his mansion. Elena was in a panic, hoping it was all just a dream. "My legs are burning!" she screamed. After a while, Cavanaugh wheeled a wheelchair into Elena's room. The girl was furious. Everything that had happened to her was because of him. Despite everything, the surgeon continued to care for his detained guest, for instance, giving her a rose. Elena called the blonde a loser and said she wouldn't let him take care of her. As a lesson, Cavanaugh took his prisoner outside in the rain and suggested she scream for help. Wiping herself with a towel, Elena assured him she never enjoyed making love with him. He was so helpless, clumsy, like a rag. In the evening, Cavanaugh came back with Anne. He turned the music up loud and gagged the prisoner, then dragged her away. Anne wanted to fix their relationship. The girl immediately pounced on the blonde and pulled down his pants. All this happened in front of Elena. For a moment, Cavanaugh imagined his prisoner in Anne's place, and it all ended immediately. Elena was amused by the spectacle, while Anne tried to calm down the quick finisher. Upset, Cavanaugh asked to be left alone, but then the phone rang, which Anne had turned on. This enraged him, and he demanded she leave, handing back the house keys. She complied. In the bushes, Ray, who had been hiding and watching the house, noticed it all. Cavanaugh called the florist and ordered another bouquet for Elena. As soon as she got the chance, the girl mocked the failed lover. How long did he last? 3 seconds? He was probably ashamed of himself his whole life, just like they did, but then it didn't even last 2 seconds. Cavanaugh believed that if Elena were a normal woman, she would have assured him everything was fine in bed. She would have done so out of love and respect, but she only felt contempt for him. It turned out that the last time the blonde ordered flowers to Elena's address to mislead everyone. Unlike the prisoner, he could jump rope. Elena was surrounded by many flowers. Cavanaugh rushed to her to give her medicine, and when he stepped aside, she was found to have no arms. Suddenly she laughed, making Cavanaugh uncomfortable. The man continued to work out. Elena asked never to leave her alone, hoping someone would find her someday. Maybe Ray would kill him, but Cavanaugh thought no one would care for her like he did. When Elena dozed off, the blonde called the pharmacy to order necessary medications. Elena woke up and called him. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was Lawrence. Cavanaugh told him he was living with Elena. Lawrence wanted to know how she was, and the maniac handed her the phone. It was a joke. Cavanaugh had already cut the wire. Too bad she can't kill him. She was sure her injuries were minor at first, but he turned her into a cripple. Cavanaugh pulled out a gun and said he could give her joy by shooting himself, but in her situation, it wasn't an option. Then he imagined Elena with all her limbs touching him and saying pleasant, intimate things. When he came to, he had an interesting idea. He ordered a call girl and made love to her in front of Elena to show what a stud he could be. "How was I today?" boasted Cavanaugh. "I did it just for you." He continued caring for Elena like a doll, brushing her hair daily, reading books, feeding her with a spoon. At least Elena drank less. She herself became less as well. One day she said she wanted to feel like a woman. "Kiss me." Cavanaugh understood where this was going and decided to add romance. He placed an order at the store as Elena liked, a bottle of vodka, lemon juice, and pomegranates. The clerk immediately called Ray. He arrived at the mansion when Cavanaugh was just kissing Elena. He was, to put it mildly, shocked at what was left of her. Coming to his senses, he started beating the pervert, but the girl asked him to stop, saying she didn't need him and wanted to stay. Ray beat the blonde until he lost consciousness and left, while Elena shouted she loved him and asked him to wake up. Cavanaugh woke up, but not at home in the hospital. He had dozed off while Dr. Harrison performed surgery. Anne asked him to visit her later, and a nurse who had been a prostitute in his dream came out of the elevator. Cavanaugh went to Elena's ward and kissed her hands. Her legs were also intact. After the accident, Cavanaugh immediately called an ambulance and accompanied her to the hospital. Time passed, but the surgeon was still haunted by these strange dreams.